We are back on Morning Line. Professor John Weil joining us from MTSU, taking your phone calls, questions, comments on the Republican convention underway. Last day is today, and the president will wrap things up, accepting the nomination. And let's go next to Taylor. Taylor, good morning. Hi, Taylor.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning to the professor. I'd like to start out by thanking Ann for her call. I agree with her 100%, and I'd like now to say something positive about the convention, and that is I'll mention three speakers that have been ignored by the national press and locally, and I'll start out with the young man Sandman from Kentucky who gave a speech. He's the young fella that was at the pro-life march and had this supposed Native American in his face that the media absolutely crucified incorrectly. He filed a $250 million lawsuit against CNN and others, and those have been settled. So they didn't settle them because they knew they were right, but because they were wrong. I'd like to speak about the First Lady's speech. I thought it was marvelous. The professor has kind of downplayed it, but the remarks about Michelle Obama, if a couple of lines were picked up, so what? And was her speech not censored like it was supposed to be? Well, I don't know that that's correct. I thought she hit on a lot of great points, and for those that want to make fun of her accent, the lady can speak 5 languages. Who else on the other side can put up someone that new to the country? The one thing that really kind of surprised me, and I'll mention a couple other things, that oath the immigrants took, that's a lot longer oath. I don't know that I ever heard that before. But that was and I'm sure it's the standard one, but it was much lengthier than I thought. And now Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz had something to say, and of course Nick Durbin and Nancy Pelosi are trying to scald him over it, but there's a lot to be said in what Lou Holtz had to say about the religion of both the president and vice president on the Democratic side. And with that, I think it's been a pretty good conviction. It's not had the speeches and enthusiasm that the roaring crowds in convention halls have had in the past. And I don't know if it's going to make much of a bump either way. But it's not going to be just the disease that's going to be in this election. The turmoil in these cities is certainly not in the Democrats' favor. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, also the economy will play into it. Lou Holtz, of course, former football coach, Notre Dame, best known for that, winning a national championship and all of that. So yeah, there have been a lot of speakers. I did not get to see Lou Holtz speak. And Herschel Walker, did he not speak also as well, I think, at the Republican convention? Saw Herschel Walker, another former athlete, speaking as well, talking about the president and why he supports him. So, yeah, there have been a lot of speakers there, and there's so many. We don't see them all, and the media grabs onto certain ones as it goes, maybe the ones that are maybe in the profile positions. And we mentioned Marsha Blackburn, correct?
Yes. Actually, I thought his analysis was pretty good, Taylor's. I thought Sandman did give a very, give sort of a warning about, especially first impressions that you sometimes get from the media are not always accurate. You don't always have the full story. I wasn't necessarily advocating that the president's wife's speech should have been censored. I think it actually showed a great deal of humanity, and was largely designed to emphasize her humanitarian work, which I think is a very good thing. And I would agree. I didn't necessarily agree with Lou Holtz, but I thought that he did. I thought that was the kind of speech, actually, we talked about appealing primarily to the base. I think the kind of speech Holtz gave was the kind of speech that could maybe appeal across party lines, might bring some other people in. So I think they're good examples of speeches at the convention that were fairly successful.
Let's go next to Benji. Good morning, Benji.
Hello.
Hi, Benji. Go ahead.
All right. Just quick little information on history and whatnot. George W. had set up a pandemic panel, and then the crash happened, then the election happened. A bunch of Republicans, including McConnell, came out and said that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure that Obama and Biden was a one-term president. They brought back the economy. They kept the panel together. The next election comes along, the economy's going good. Yes, it got better under Trump, but not, from what I heard about the analysis, it was actually growing, kept growing the way it would have been growing. But he dissolved the panel, and then now we're in the mess we're in. I think the best person to actually bring back a failed or down economy is Biden, because he's dealt with that. Trump was riding a wave that was already there. I'll hang up and listen to see what you got to say. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your call. What do you think, Professor?
I think there's something to that. I mean, again, it's hard. It's hard to know what you ought to be, what you don't know, and what you ought to be able to foresee. I do think that some of the processes that were in place were dismantled at an inappropriate time, and it came back to bite us. On the other hand, had we not had a pandemic, people would have said, well, that was a great, money-saving thing. I did find it a little disturbing this week. Apparently, we have new guidelines now from the government as to who should get tested. It was attributed to Dr. Fauci, and from what I've been able to determine from the news this morning, at least, Dr. Fauci was under anesthesia at the time the decisions were being made for his vocal cord surgery. So it appears to me that politics has really played a much larger role than science has in the COVID war, and for better or worse, that's where we are.
As we wrap things up here, I don't know about you, but watching so many things these days that have gone virtual, and some of them I miss the fact that there's the crowd, and other things, frankly, I think they're pretty darn good. Okay, I mean, be it the NFL draft virtual, I thought that was great. I love seeing the coaches in their living rooms and all that. I wouldn't be unhappy if they did it that way. And quite frankly, I've enjoyed these virtual conventions. I understand maybe from the point of view of the president and the candidates and the crowd and the excitement, there's something they're missing. I see that. But it just seems like when they come up and can give their speeches, and it just is, to me, easier to watch. And I'm talking about both conventions. I've enjoyed them both virtual, and I wouldn't be against them staying that way, even though I know when we finally get out of this coronavirus crap, we're going to go back to normal to some degree with these things. But I think they've gone well. And I kind of like the way it's been set up to this point.
I think there's been good production value.
Yeah.
A lot of, almost sort of like the Reagan era. Last night's speech by Pence at Fort McHenry. Whether it was appropriate to use public space or not, I'm not sure. But it was a nice event. I will say, as a college professor, I have rarely been more heartened than actually seeing students back in the building and back on campus.
Yeah.
There's something when it comes to teaching that, just being in the classroom and sort of seeing the expression on kids' eyes. I wish, by the way, that I could have a class with Ann in it. I love people who challenge me. And I appreciate the fact that she did so.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I didn't mean that when it comes to education. In my mind, there's no substitute for the actual classroom interaction with teachers, other students, and that's missing, and I hope that we can get past that at some point in the game. Real quick, as we wrap things up, if they do that debate at Belmont, you imagine that'll be virtual, or I guess the candidates, would both be there, but maybe not much of a crowd?
I think you could probably have, depending on the room, you could probably have 20 people maybe from each party, socially distanced there in the audience. I would hope they have some, in couple debates, the moderator has often brought in someone, from online to ask a question. It's possible that that would happen as well.
Do you think the debate will go down? Do you think we'll have at least that one debate and then maybe one, vice presidential debate?
Well, the person who needs it most, judging by the polls, would be Trump. And I did see somebody giving Biden advice that he ought to say, he's not going to participate in the debate unless Trump releases his tax forms, and I don't think that's likely to happen.
No.
But I think we'll probably get a presidential and a vice presidential debate. But again, anything can happen between now and then.
I'm interested to see them, but like the conventions, I don't think those will change anyone's mind, but it is another perspective, and I would like to see it as well. I really would. Professor, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see how things play out down the road. We've talked about the Democrats last week, Republican convention this week, and we'll follow now the I guess, the short time we have before the big presidential election. And I think it's going to certainly, as all elections are for presidents, historic. So, sir, you be safe. Enjoy things in class today, and we'll see you down the road, all right? Thank you. Professor John Weil. We'll be back wrapping things up right after this. Stay with us.